All right, my next guest is the president and CEO of the American Financial Services Association, Bill Himpler. It is the oldest and largest national trade group for the consumer credit industry. Bill joined AFSA in 2004 from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, where he headed the Congressional Relations Office. Bill, good to have you here.
Steve, great to be with you. It's always
Really
nice to talk to folks in the Midwest.
Well, there you go. Well, Americans obviously concerned about the economy for a variety of reasons. Bidenomics has been a colossal failure to most people. In fact, nobody on the left will even call it Bidenomics anymore. They don't use that term. It's turned toxic. I mean, just look at Memorial Day barbecues, up 20% or more since 2021. And that's just an easy metric based on this holiday weekend. I mean, things are tough all over. The cost of living is going up. The cost of everything is going up, it seems. And the divide between the rich and the poor, it's getting wider. Nobody talks about that anymore either. There's trouble, and Americans are concerned, aren't they?
Absolutely. I mean, whether you nailed it, whether you're at the gas pump or buying groceries, Memorial Day weekend is one weekend out of the year, but week in and week out, folks are struggling just to get by. And the Fed has had a statistic that's been in place way too long. Almost 40% of the American population doesn't have $400 to meet an emergency expense. I mean, and that number just keeps
And think
going.
about that, Bill. For $400, what kind of an emergency are you dealing with? Something pretty
Well,
small, really. I mean, not big. I mean, a car repair could be $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 if it's something you blow something up in your car and you got to get to work. I mean, there's real trouble out there, isn't there?
Exactly. I mean, $400 might get you a couple stitches at the emergency room. But, whether we like it or not, and really appreciate you having me on, we're a credit-driven economy. As you said at the outset, our association's been around for over 100 years. Not only do we represent the industry itself, but we also represent the consumer. We want to make sure that they have access to safe and affordable credit. We were actually started with consumer groups and industry coming together to make sure that there was a product that was safe and affordable and sustainable from a profitability standpoint. And that's how we got started. And, currently you mentioned Washington in your last segment, and that's where my office is. Wish it could be otherwise, but the federal government is there. We've got an agency that's out of control. The Supreme Court just recently ruled that the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau is constitutionally funded. We saw otherwise and argued otherwise, but 7 of the justices didn't see our way. And as soon as the court case came down from the Supremes, the director, Rohit Chopra, announced that he was, rolling out a whole new host of staff, and these folks make top dollar. I mean, they exceed.
Of course they do. People in government always make more money than those in the private sector. You know that. Yeah, I was surprised to read that Clarence Thomas was among those. He wrote the majority opinion on that case. Surprised by that because basically they're not funded by Congress. They get to go straight to the Treasury and say, here's how much money we need. How much money do we need? But they said it was created by Congress and therefore it withstood muster. I disagree with them, but that's where we are, right?
Yeah. But that's only the tip of the iceberg, Steve. Essentially, what you're looking at, and this is something you rarely see in Washington or anywhere else, is industry actually looking for regulations. Because currently the director regulates our industry and puts essentially the brakes on our industry when folks need access to credit more now than ever by press release and blog. It's kind of like being pulled over during Memorial Day for speeding, and there's no speed limit posted. You're pulled over by the sheriff. He says you're speeding. You have no idea whether you are or not because there's no rules of the road. It's gotten so bad. You're not going to believe this, Steve. Congress actually did something in a bipartisan fashion.
No.
They wrote a letter to the CFPB and said, why don't you put some definitions out there? They call some of my industry players risky or abusive, but there's no definition. In one instance, the director put out a notice that if you have drop-down menus on your landing page for your business website, that's abusive. Well, Steve, if everybody put all of the information every customer and every industry needs on their homepage, can you imagine how confusing that would be? But apparently that's abusive.
It's concerning to me, a lot of the things in the economy. It's concerning to me a lot of things that go on out there. And you talked about being a debt-driven economy, which it is, a credit-driven economy. But I'll call it debt
Well,
because we're $1 trillion
is.
in consumer card debt. Credit card debt is over $1 trillion now. And to me, that's a frightening place to be. Am I wrong?
Well, it is a frightening place to be, but it's symptomatic of our overall economy and what's happening in
Fair.
Washington. You know, I was on Capitol Hill in the 90s when, we broke through $1 trillion in national debt, and we were horrified then. We're well on our way to, 35 trillion in just a few short years. So it's symptomatic of our time. But essentially what you need is, and what we have happening is that probably 85 to 90%, so 8 or 9 out of 10 Americans utilize credit effectively. They use it as a convenience, and they pay they pay off their bill, every month. Some folks get a little behind. And so if there's one thing I can leave with your viewers and listeners today, it's, well, if you get behind on a payment, if you hit a bump in the road, and we all hit bumps in the road, Steve, you know that just as well as I do, reach out to your creditors. We want to make sure you guys succeed. We want to get you through that bump in the road.
Can you do that? I mean, can you help people get through that difficult time?
Absolutely. We can readjust their payment. We can extend the term of the extension of credit. We can work with them in any host of ways to make sure that they succeed, because we all want, our customers to succeed.
Well, we want them to succeed too. We don't want people going bankrupt. We want to make sure people make it. And so you have then tools available to help people. You have a toolkit, if you will, of sorts. How do people find that and make access to that toolkit?
Well, you can go to caseforcredit.com, all lowercase, all strung together, and find the tools you need. And we're ready there to help. We've also got an education foundation for some of your younger viewers, and for some of those that are like me, a little long in the tooth, that provides an online financial literacy curriculum, free. It's called Money Skill. Like I said, it's 36 units, and it's really very comprehensive. Talks about budgeting, talks about financing, talks about setting your priorities, and how to improve your credit score, how to ensure that you've got your car and home insured properly. It goes through all the nuts and bolts of being financially sound. So
basically being able to deal with that $400 emergency or something more serious because you're prepared for it. You're not buried in debt and in real trouble. Again, caseforcredit.com, caseforcredit.com, all lowercase. You can check that out. Bill, greatly appreciate you being here. You come back anytime.
Thank you, sir.
Greatly appreciate it. Bill Himpler, President and CEO of the American Financial Services Association, the oldest and largest national trade group for consumer credit. And you can find help there. caseforcredit.com. I'll be back.